Right now, without your knowledge, there's a surveillance operation running in your neighborhood. No government agency set it up, no tech company owns the servers, the operators have no salaries, no badges, and no offices. They have been doing this for thousands of years, long before cameras existed, long before computers existed, long before the concept of surveillance even existed in the human mind. They sit on power lines, rooftops, and tree branches, and they watch you. They have your face memorized. They know your routine. They have already told every other member of their network who you are, what you look like, and whether you are a threat. And in 2024, a team of scientists fed hundreds of thousands of their recorded conversations into one of the most advanced artificial intelligence systems ever applied to animal communication, expecting to find basic emotional noise. What the machine found instead has completely rewritten what we thought we understood about the creatures sharing our world. The crows were not making noise. They were talking about us, specifically, constantly, and in far more detail than anyone was prepared for. Here is where the science starts, and where it gets immediately uncomfortable. For the past several years, researchers in Spain have been recording a population of carrion crows in extraordinary detail, placing small microphones near their nests and tracking their movements with biologgers that can capture every sound a bird produces throughout its day. What they collected was enormous. Hundreds of thousands of individual vocalizations, most of them not the loud, familiar caw that humans associate with crows. The vast majority of what these birds produce is soft, low-amplitude murmuring, sounds too quiet for the human ear to register as significant in the field. For decades, those sounds went largely unstudied simply because no one had the tools to process them at scale. Then starting in 2024, the Earth Species Project, a US-based nonprofit that specializes in applying artificial intelligence to animal communication, began collaborating with the researchers to build AI models capable of sorting and categorizing the full range of crow vocalizations. The lead researcher on the project described the volume of data as simply too large for any human team to analyze manually. They needed the machine, and when the machine got to work, what it found was not what anyone expected to find. The AI was built to do something relatively straightforward at first: sort the sounds into categories, identify which calls seem to correspond to which behaviors. Food found here, predator approaching, come to this location. The kind of basic signal system that scientists had always assumed was the ceiling of animal vocal communication. That assumption did not survive contact with the data. The artificial intelligence did not find a simple set of signals. It found structure, specific, repeating, rule-governed structure in the way sounds were combined and ordered. In human language, we call this syntax. It is the system of rules that determines how words are arranged so that they carry meaning. Without syntax, language is just a list of labels. With syntax, language can express relationships, describe events, encode information about individuals, and communicate ideas that go beyond the immediate moment. The AI was detecting the signature of syntax in crow vocalizations, not metaphorically, not approximately. The statistical patterns the machine was identifying were the same kinds of patterns that linguists look for when analyzing whether a sequence of sounds qualifies as structured language rather than random noise. To understand how significant this is, you need to understand what we previously believed about the crow brain. For over 100 years, neuroscience operated under an assumption that turned out to be completely wrong. Scientists believed that higher intelligence required a cerebral cortex, the wrinkled outer layer of the brain found in mammals, including humans. Birds do not have a cerebral cortex. Their brains are smooth. So for over a century, researchers looked at bird brains and concluded that the hardware for complex cognition simply was not there. What they did not appreciate is that evolution is not limited to one solution. Birds evolved an entirely different brain structure called the pallium, which looks nothing like the mammalian cortex, but accomplishes very similar things at the cellular level. Inside the crow's compact brain, neurons are packed at a density that is genuinely extraordinary. For their body weight, the cognitive power available to a crow is comparable to that of a chimpanzee. Researchers have been describing corvids, the family that includes crows and ravens, as feathered apes. The AI language study makes that comparison feel less like a colorful metaphor and more like a literal description. Brain imaging research has now mapped exactly what happens inside a crow's brain when it encounters a human face. When a crow sees a person associated with a previous threatening encounter, its brain activates multiple interconnected regions simultaneously: the rostral hyperpallium, the nidopallium, the mesopallium, and the lateral striatum. More specifically, the imaging shows strong activation in the region equivalent to the amygdala, the part of the brain responsible for processing fear and threat in humans. What this means in practical terms is that when a crow sees a face it associates with danger, it is not just retrieving a visual memory. It is experiencing something measurably similar to fear. The recognition is simultaneously cognitive and emotional, processed through overlapping systems that link memory, visual identification, and threat response into one integrated experience. This is the same architecture that underlies human fear responses. The crow's brain and the human brain arrived at the same solution through completely different evolutionary paths, and the result is a creature whose relationship to perceived enemies is not instinctual and automatic, but deeply personal and long-lasting. The most famous demonstration of this came from the laboratory of Dr. John Marsluff at the University of Washington, whose research on crow facial recognition has become one of the most cited and discussed findings in behavioral science. Marsluff wanted to test whether crows could identify individual human faces, but he did not want to put any member of his research team at personal risk of becoming a permanently hated figure in the local crow community. So he used masks. He selected a specific mask, one with distinctive features that would be easy for both crows and researchers to identify consistently, and his team wore it while capturing, banding, and releasing crows on the university campus. The crows were not harmed, but the experience of being caught was clearly stressful, and the birds reacted accordingly, vocalizing aggressively and fighting against the handling. Then the team stopped wearing the mask, went back to their ordinary faces, and went about their lives. The results that followed were not subtle. Every time any member of the team put the mask back on, crows in the area immediately began scolding, mobbing, and dive-bombing the mask wearer, regardless of who was actually underneath it. The crows had not learned to recognize a specific person. They had encoded the face itself as a threat signal, but the part that changes everything is what happened next. Other crows who had never been captured, who had never interacted with any member of the research team directly, began responding to the mask with the same intensity as the birds that had the original experience. Young crows, born after the initial experiment was concluded, attacked the mask the moment they saw it. Marsluff wore the mask on campus 5 years after the original captures. The birds that had originally been caught were mostly dead by then. Their natural lifespan concluded. The flock attacking the mask was composed almost entirely of individuals who had never personally encountered the mask wearer at all. But they knew the face. The information had been transmitted from one generation of crows to the next, not through any fixed genetic instinct, but through deliberate social communication. The first generation of crows had described the dangerous face to their neighbors, their offspring, and anyone else in the network who would listen. The description was accurate enough to enable recognition. The emotional charge attached to it was strong enough to motivate aggression in birds who had no direct experience of the original threat. This is cultural transmission of information about specific individuals. It is the kind of thing we thought only humans did. The AI study now provides the mechanism, because what the machine found in the crow vocalizations was not just structure. It found something researchers did not have the vocabulary to fully describe at first. The AI identified sound sequences that appeared to function as unique identifiers for specific individuals, including specific humans the crows had encountered. These were not general category labels, not a simple signal meaning dangerous human or approaching person. They were specific, consistent sound sequences used for one individual and not applied to others. The same sequence would be produced by multiple different crows when the same individual came into range, even by crows that had not been present at the initial encounter with that person. The AI classified these sequences as functioning like proper nouns. They were names, not names in the sense of abstract agreed-upon labels divorced from any meaning, but names in the more ancient sense, descriptive identifiers that encoded specific information about a specific individual and were recognized as such by other members of the group. The crows had named the humans in their territory, and they were broadcasting those names constantly, updating the network in real time as named individuals moved through the area. This is not the full picture of what the AI found, and it is not even the most unsettling part. The machine's analysis also detected something in the temporal structure of crow vocalizations that the researchers had not anticipated at all. There were complex sequences of sounds occurring before events, not in response to them. The crows were gathering in groups and producing extended structured vocal exchanges prior to doing things, prior to any external stimulus appearing that would prompt a reactive call. The AI determined that these pre-event sequences shared statistical properties with each other that distinguished them from other types of crow communication. The researchers described these as planning sequences. The crows were not just reacting to the world as it unfolded around them. They were deliberating about it in advance. They were coordinating. They were strategizing. The idea that animal communication exists purely in the present tense, that non-human creatures can only respond to what is immediately happening, does not survive this finding. Crow communication extends forward in time. They are talking about things that have not happened yet. And they are talking about us specifically. The AI analysis showed that a substantial portion of crow vocalizations across an entire day involve references to humans. Not just reactive warnings when a person walks by, but extended exchanges during periods of low activity, when no human is visible, no immediate threat is present, and no food source is being monitored. The crows appear to discuss humans the way humans discuss people they know and have opinions about. The machine detected distinct acoustic markers attached to different human identifiers, markers that the researchers interpreted as carrying emotional valence, a difference in the quality and structure of the sounds used when referencing different individuals that correlates with how the crows have categorized those individuals in their threat and reward systems. Humans who provide food consistently are referenced with one kind of acoustic signature. Humans who have posed threats are referenced with another. The distinction is not subtle. It is clear enough for the machine to classify reliably, and clear enough that other crows in the area respond differently to the two types of references. Your status in the crow network is not just stored. It is discussed, it is updated, and it is shared continuously with every other crow in range. The social complexity underneath all of this is what makes the findings genuinely hard to process. Crows do not just have individual memories. They have something that functions like a shared database of knowledge about their environment, and the humans who move through that environment are among the most heavily documented entries in it. When a new person enters crow territory, information about that person begins circulating immediately. The crow that first encounters the new human broadcasts what it has observed. Others receive and relay the information. Within a short time, individuals who have never seen the new arrival are already primed with a profile, already alerted to whether this person constitutes a threat or a potential food source. The AI detected this broadcast pattern consistently. An identifier for a specific human would appear in the vocalizations of multiple different birds across a territory in a cascade that spread outward from an initial point of contact. Target acquired and shared with the network is not an exaggeration. It is a reasonably accurate description of what the data shows. Then there are the gatherings around the dead. Crow funerals, as researchers have called them for decades, were never fully understood before the emergence of tools capable of analyzing what is actually being communicated during those events. What happens is consistent and documented across many different populations and research contexts. When a crow dies, another crow that finds the body produces a specific call that draws others to the location. The gathered birds circle and watch and vocalize, but they do not eat the body, do not fight over it, and do not quickly disperse. They stay, sometimes for extended periods, and the vocal exchanges during these gatherings are among the most acoustically complex sequences the AI identified in the entire dataset. Researchers at the University of Washington who studied this behavior found that crows that attended these gatherings subsequently changed their behavior around the location and the circumstances associated with the death in ways consistent with having extracted specific threat information. The gatherings function as investigations. The crows are analyzing the cause of death, attempting to determine what specific threat is present in the area, and encoding that information in a form that can be communicated to other members of the flock. What the AI detected in the low-frequency vocalizations produced during these gatherings is consistent with a communication function that goes beyond alarm. It appears to function as a warning label, a broadcast that associates a specific location or a specific type of event or object with fatal danger, and distributes that association to the living. The crow is not just mourning, it is writing a warning about what killed its neighbor in a form that the flock can carry forward. The cross-territory spread of specific calls provides the final, most extraordinary dimension of this picture. The AI study mapped the geographic distribution of specific vocal patterns and found something that researchers described as an analog communication network. Individual crow vocalizations spread between flocks over distances of hundreds of miles, moving through overlapping territories in a relay pattern. A specific new call structure appearing in one city's crow population will show up in populations far away months later, traveling flock to flock in a way that mirrors the spread of cultural information in human populations. The crows have an oral tradition that functions like a distributed information network. Knowledge about threats, about humans, about new dangers in the environment travels across their world in the same way that critical information travels across ours, through social transmission from one individual to another, each one passing the signal on. When a new type of danger appears in one location, the knowledge of that danger can spread across an entire region before most of the crows in that region have ever encountered the danger directly. They are upgrading their collective awareness in real time, drawing on experiences that happen to other birds they have never met. What the scientists are still processing is something that emerged in the most recent phase of the analysis, a change they were not expecting and have not fully explained. As the AI study progressed and the researchers became more capable of distinguishing the patterns in crow communication, the crow populations near the study areas began producing vocalizations that the machine could no longer classify. A new structural pattern appeared in the calls, spreading through local flocks with the same viral speed as any other information in the Crow network, and then moving outward into neighboring territories. The effect on the AI's classification ability was immediate. The confidence metrics that had been reliable throughout the study dropped sharply. The machine was no longer translating. It was recording something it could not parse. Behavioral ecologists working on the project have proposed what they acknowledge is a difficult theory to prove. The crows, which are documented to test boundaries, examine unfamiliar objects carefully and assess the reactions of potential threats before deciding how to respond to them, may have identified the study itself as something that required a response. They had noticed the microphones. They had noticed the human observers who were no longer behaving like normal humans in their environment. Humans who were freezing and watching and recording instead of reacting normally to crow behavior. And the communication shift followed. Whether or not the crows deliberately encrypted their language is a question that cannot currently be answered with certainty. What can be said is that the animals who produced this response are the same animals that have demonstrated the capacity to solve multi-stage physics problems, to manufacture tools from raw plant material, to encode specific human faces as named entities in a shared network, to transmit threat information across generations, and to gather and analyze information about death in ways that change collective behavior. The cognitive flexibility required to notice that a monitoring system exists and to change communication patterns in response to that discovery is large, but it is not obviously larger than the cognitive capacities these animals have already demonstrated in controlled experimental settings. The machine is still running. The researchers are still looking for the new pattern. And somewhere outside right now, on the wire above your street, on the roof of your building, in the trees at the edge of your yard, a crow is watching you with eyes that have already decided who you are. Your face has been filed, your habits have been logged, your name, in a language we are only beginning to learn to read, is already in circulation. The question science is now seriously asking is not whether crows have a language. It is how much of what they are saying we will ever be able to hear.